Hey everyone, welcome to another episode on the Starting 11 YouTube channel. I'm Rohan Rajpal, and I'll be joined in a 12-man mock draft with fellow Starting 11 members Ryan, Leo, TJ, Ethan, and Lev. Good to see you guys all here. Just wanted to pose a quick question before we start. The draft's about to start in about a minute and a half. Who is one player that you're targeting in all of your drafts or all of your mock drafts? Let's just go around. So let's start with Brian.
So the one player I'm going to be targeting in all my mock drafts is DeAndre Hopkins. And what I found is that his average draft position is surprisingly low. He's going in the third round in most mocks, whereas I see him as a first round talent. He's one of the most talented wide receivers in the league and just got traded to Arizona where he's going to catch passes from Kyler Murray, who I think is going to have a massive breakout year. So I don't see why he's going so low, and you could easily get him for a steal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
My pick is Robert Woods. His average draft position right now hovers about 25 spots below Cooper Kupp's, and I think there's just nothing to justify that big of a gap between the dynamic duo and LA. Robert Woods traditionally doesn't get too many red zone opportunities, but if he with even increases that a little bit, he easily can be a top 15 wide receiver. But even if he stays steady, I'd be thrilled to get him in the fifth round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Woods is much better value than Cooper Kupp, and that's a good point with the difference in draft position. What about you, Lev?
I am all over Josh Jacobs this year if I can get him. I think that this is one of the few running backs being drafted outside of the first round that has some actual kind of top one, top three, Jesus Christ, RB talent. I think that there's a lot of upside for a guy like Josh Jacobs with a lot of vacated targets. I'm going to be going for him in every league that I can, pretty much.
And Leo?
Somebody that I'm going to be really targeting, if possible, is Austin Eckler. I think he's got really good potential, as evidenced by the first couple weeks at the beginning of last season, especially now that Melvin Gordon is gone, and he's really the explosive aspect of the Chargers offense. I think the offense is going to be much more of a smaller passing game and more running oriented without Phillip Rivers there. And I think that'll really play into the strengths of Eckler this season.
Yeah, definitely. He went off before Melvin Gordon was there, and it's pretty uninspiring rest of the backfield. What about you, TJ?
I'm going to be targeting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the rookie playing for
Oh, that
Kansas
was
City.
mine.
I mean, anyone playing with Mahomes is obviously a great pick, and someone as dynamic and with as much pass catching ability as Helaire, I think, will be a great pick this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like his average draft position is going to keep rising. It's already towards the back of the first round. I'm on the clock with the first overall pick, so I'm going to pick Christian McCaffrey. Not much of a question there, honestly. He was the RB1 last year overall by a country mile, and with Teddy Bridgewater being known for being a check down quarterback, I don't think I think we're going to get much of the same, and it's going to be a solid Panthers offense, and CMC will be at the helm of it.
So now I'm on the clock, and my pick is going to be Ezekiel Elliott. I'm going for consistency in my first round pick. I want a guy that can get me 20 points every week. And Ezekiel Elliott, with those consistent touchdown numbers in the Cowboys offense, he's going to get lots of carries every week. I think it's a reliable, safe pick.
Yeah, definitely.
TJ, you're up.
Okay. Despite my pitches right here are Derrick Henry is who's going usually in this moment, or I could pick Clyde or Michael Thomas. I think as much as I like Clyde, I'm going to have to go with King Henry here just because he was so consistent this year.
Yeah, Derrick Henry doesn't need a PPR format to succeed. He was the leading rusher in the league last year, and the Titans have made a huge commitment to him with that recent huge contract. So I'm pretty confident in taking Henry pretty early in drafts. There's even an argument to draft him with the second or third overall pick, honestly.
I'm up here. I'm going to go ahead and take Clyde. I think it's too good of an opportunity to pass up, knowing that he's the number one back in a very bleak otherwise running back oriented position. And because you know that the Chiefs are so inclined to use their running backs in many ways as possible, and it's such a fantasy football friendly position, I'm going to go ahead and sort of take a risk with a rookie there, but I think it'll pay off.
Fair selection for sure.
Ethan, how about you?
I'm on the clock right now, and I was kind of targeting high end wide receiver at the moment. And for me, it's between Tay Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Julio Jones. I'll go Devontae Adams in a wide receiver field that pretty much has no one else to steal from him. So Tay Adams for me.
So we're coming up on my pick now. My picks, actually, because I'm helming the second round and picking at the end of the first. What I love about this year is that there's you see that Yahoo has 5 running backs, all ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what that means that there's a lot of really good wide receiver talent just chilling out here at the end of the first round. Of course, I already mentioned back at the pre-draft that I'm wanting Josh Jacobs, and I do actually like Jacobs over some of the other running backs here, including Kenyon Drake and Joe Mixon. I think we'll be able to debate on that. Tyreek Hill just got auto-drafted, which is a damn shame because that is who I wanted to pick. But it's okay because Julio Jones is here waiting for me. Getting Julio Jones at pick 12, I don't think anyone can feel bad about that. So that's going to be my pick here. And now I've got another one. I'm going to go running back here. I've got a couple options: Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Miles Sanders, Nick Chubb, and Josh Jacobs. And then a number of other really good, compelling options down the list. There's a lot of really good choices here. Again, though, this is my only chance to draft Josh Jacobs, and I actually do think that this is a guy that has a lot more upside than most of the other running backs above him, including Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon. We'll get to talking about that after. Here we go. So what do you guys think of that?
Yeah, interesting pick there. Interesting pick there because I've personally, one of the players I've been targeting at the back of the first round in many mock drafts is Kenyon Drake. Although I can understand not picking him, as you can see, there's a questionable designation there.
Yep.
He was apparently spotted in the walking boot. He says he's fine, but it's definitely something to monitor. And Drake's not a running back who's really ever been the bell cow in an offense, save the maybe last 8 games of the season, or however many games he played last season after being traded from Miami to Arizona. So there are definitely some questions there, although his play was very promising.
Ethan, you're on the clock.
Yeah, I'm up here. And initially, I like to go elite wide receiver, elite running back here in late first round, early second round. But I'm actually going to take Travis Kelce with my pick just because I just think there's such a big gap between him and number 2, and I think that's going to persist into the 2020 season.
You think so? Leo, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm up here. Somebody actually took Eckler, who I mentioned that I wanted, but not that badly. A bit of a surprise to me there.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Kenyon Drake is right here. We saw the damage that he could have done, I believe he was a top 5 scoring back in the last couple of weeks of the season. And especially with this retooled Arizona offense that just added DeAndre, I can't pass that up.
Yeah, that's a great value for him right there.
All right, so I'm on the clock right now. There's a couple of great options here. There's George Kittle, who I think is the only tight end who's in the same league as Kelce right now. Sorry, Zach Ertz, but I just think the Philly offense can't do it. I could take Aaron Jones, and honestly, I could go receiver here, but I think having Kittle and a really, really strong tight end will be maybe better than some of the receivers here. So I'm going to go with him.
Guys, look at where Yahoo has Melvin Gordon ranked. Look at how high they have that X
Very
rank.
high.
Wow.
I think there's a lot of reasons not to draft Melvin Gordon that high. I mean, Fangio still hasn't committed to Gordon as the starter. He's doing the 1A, 1B sort of thing. Ryan, you're up.
Yeah, so as you guys were saying, I'm not really in love with a lot of the guys. I'm not in love with Gordon, and I'm not really in love with a lot of the running backs and receivers still on the board. So I'm actually going to make a big move. I'm going to take the first quarterback of the draft. My strategy is consistency and reliability, and that's the name of the game for Pat Mahomes.
I have some questions about that, but first, Rohan.
Yes, I appear to be up. Oh, well, my pick just got taken. It was Chris Godwin. Now, I'm right at the turn, so I'll have 2 picks right here. I know that for some reason, a lot of people in this draft particularly seem to be avoiding Allen Robinson, but I actually think he's going into a great situation in Chicago as in his third season there. He's coming into a contract year, and really there's never been an extremely competent sidekick to him there. I mean, there's never been much of a threat at the tight end position. Right now, it's the 35-year-old Jimmy Graham, and the wide receiver too is Anthony Miller, who's had problems staying healthy. And it's at the worst, the quarterback situation.
Draft quickly.
Ooh, yes. That.
Justify that pick real quick.
Yeah. Dodged a bullet there, but I'm actually pretty confident in Connor as well. I'll just finish up with A-Rob though. I believe that Foles will probably start some games and definitely be a little better than Mitch Trubisky was last year. And the target share for A-Rob last year was insane, and I see no reason for that to not continue. And that would definitely justify picking him as a wide receiver one.
So I'm on the clock now, and my pick's going to be Juju. Ben Roethlisberger is back in the Steelers offense, and while at this age he may not be very efficient, I expect him to throw a lot of interceptions. I do expect him to put up volume numbers and throw for well over 4,000 yards, and that's going to bode well for his number one receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster.
All right, I'm on the clock now. I think it's time for me to pick a receiver. I haven't picked any yet. We've got Thielen, Beckham, and Mike Evans right here. All of them I think are pretty good. I think though that Mike Evans I think has the highest ceiling out of all these guys, and so I'm going to take him just because I think even though the Bucs offense might not be as good as people think it might be this year, I think if it really reaches its full potential, there's not going to be anyone better, and then everyone in that offense is going to do really well. So I'm going to go with him.
All right, I'm up on the clock. My first two picks were both running backs in Clyde and Drake, so probably time to look towards receiver or potentially tight end. I'm not really willing to reach for a tight end or any other position at this point, so I'm just looking for the best receiver available. While OBJ is definitely a flashy choice, and I do expect him to rebound from last year, I'm going to go with a more value pick in my mind, which is DJ Moore. I think he'll put up consistent numbers. He had a very underrated season last year, but still put up a lot of yards, and I expect him to repeat that.
Yeah, my pick is coming up here, and I think this is the first mock draft in which I don't take a running back in the first 2 rounds. So I'm in dire need to get some talent in that department. Fortunately, not too thrilled about the options I have here. Melvin Gordon is the default pick, and we were talking about him. And Chris Carson's safe. I think I'm going to take a risk here, actually, and draft Todd Gurley, despite his injury history. Given that I have another pick in a couple turns, I think I go with consistency here, but here's where I take my risk of the draft. Todd Gurley, right here.
That's unfortunately exactly the guy I was going to go for almost the exact same reasons. I'm not super excited about the people here, especially with Chris Carson kind of famously mired in these Carroll committees. Jonathan Taylor, who's a giant question mark and has a lot of competition from the very much still relevant Marlon Mack. I went wide receiver running back, which means my situation is not quite as dire. And there's still a couple of compelling options down the board. We've got guys like Le'Veon Bell, Leonard Fournette, David Montgomery, all pretty good. I think I am going to take one of those. But first I'm going to go for a wide receiver here because I do have 2 picks in a row. Lots of guys I'm pretty excited about here. We've got Terry McLaurin, who broke out last year and is kind of all by himself in this offense. Austin, no, I said something wrong there, but he's got a lot of target share. Calvin Ridley's also very compelling, and of course, Amari Cooper. Of these 2, I think I'm most interested in Ridley and Cooper, but considering I already drafted Julio Jones in the first round, I think I'm going to go with Cooper just out of expediency. I don't want 2 wide receivers out of the same core. That is really frightening. Not good team design, if you know what I mean. So now it's time for me to draft a running back. Lots of options here, none of whom I'm super excited about, but definitely a couple of compelling ones, including Le'Veon Bell, who we can only assume is going to have a bounce-back year. However, as the Jets fall further and further into injury wastes, maybe it's not the best option. I don't really know what I should do here. I think I am going to go with Bell, though, unfortunately. He does have the best option out of any of these
Well, unfortunately, it looks like you auto-drafted Melvin Gordon.
Oh my goodness, did my pick not go in? Oh no, I queued Le'Veon Bell. That's evil. Oh well, that's pretty unexciting. I'm not interested at all in Melvin Gordon. That's a really bad pick. Oh well.
Oh man.
I can tell you right now, if
Sure,
Bell,
mock drafts.
if Bell is still around in my pick, which is the next one, I'm taking him.
I know.
I talked about taking the risk with Gurley. We're kind of right now in the running back situation where the running back one, the bell cows, are flying off the board, and the next time I have a choice,
There goes Bell.
and there goes Bell. So cuts me short. I'm trying to look for consistency here, and I don't want Leonard Fournette.
Why not?
That Leonard Fournette is just not the guy you want in terms of just like a running back. I think I'm going to be forced to go with Mark Ingram here, but reluctant to take him.
Yeah, Fournette's in a dying offense that's going to be behind in most games. You know, the volume's not going to be there, especially because he's not in the passing game.
Yeah, if anyone, you might want to draft someone like DJ Chark from that offense. Other than that, I'm not touching anyone in Jacksonville. It's
Exactly.
complete
So
dumpster fire.
I'm up here. I do have 2 running backs already, but I'm actually interested in getting a third, just because they're pretty sparse. And Jonathan Taylor, since I already have 2 running backs that are quality, I'm willing to take Jonathan Taylor and hope that he does eventually beat out Marlon Mack. Because I've already got 2, and if that doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world.
It's understandable. Taylor is my favorite rookie from last year's draft class, and you don't draft a running back early in the second, draft a running back in the first 3 rounds of the draft and not play him.
I'd like to take an RB2 here, but I don't really like any of these options that much, and there's a lot of receivers. I mean, I think, honestly, my best option right here, at least I want to pick a running back, is probably going to be David Montgomery, just because I think the Bears make running it more often than not with their quarterback situation. And Montgomery's not a bad player, so I'm going to draft him right now.
So Cody's on auto draft, which means we have the full 30 seconds. And I want to talk about how close the X list is, DK Metcalf to Tyler Lockett. These guys are less than 10 apart, and I want to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that being justified. I think Metcalf came on pretty strong at the end of last season. He showed out in a playoff game against the Eagles where he almost single-handedly won that game. So there's a real chance that he turns into Russell Wilson's best receiver since Doug Baldwin. Yeah, what do you guys think?
So I'm actually going to pick one of these 2 receivers now that it's my turn. And my draft strategy, reliability has been the name of the game. And especially, even if DK Metcalf gets more yards in a PPR league, Tyler Lockett's going to get more receptions. And that's why I'm going to take him with this pick.
Yeah, I think in terms of consistency, Lockett is definitely the way to go because he's already proven himself. DK definitely could surpass him, but if you're just trying to play safety and trying to get like consistency, I think Lockett is the way.
I do think that both are going to have very good seasons, and if Metcalf is still around when my next pick comes up, who knows?
Yeah, I think Lockett definitely has the ability still to take the top of the defense. He's insanely fast, but at this stage in his career, or in terms of his role in the offense, he's more of the slot, like possession type receiver. All right, I'm on the clock now, and I'm going to take actually one of y'all's value picks and draft Robert Woods here as my wide receiver 2. I never really mentioned, I'm up again. Let's not auto draft James Conner this time. I'm gonna go with a third running back who I'm actually exceptionally high on. That would be Ronald Jones. Bruce Arians, the main concern with Ronald Jones is that he kept getting benched last season for not really being great in the pass blocking game. But I don't see Keyshawn Vaughn to be much of a threat, or LaShawn McCoy for that matter. He's towards the end of his career. And Arians has definitely given Jones a vote of confidence. And Jones did show out. He had a yards per carry of over 4 last year. It's a huge leap from his almost like redshirted rookie season. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does.
So now I'm on the clock, and I think this is a pretty easy pick for me. As those of you who talked to me during last season know, I really love Raheem Mostert as a player. He's so fast, talented, dynamic, And I always thought he would be the guy to emerge from that crowded 49ers committee. And now that Breida is gone, he's really going to take full control. And I think he's going to have a really good breakout year this season.
Yeah, Raheem is definitely a pick that is a swing for the fences type of deal, right? We know that people can, or that specifically the 49ers running backs can change so quickly. But if he does manage to capture the top role and keep it, that could be one of the biggest value picks of the draft.
Yeah, whoever's the top guy there is going to be value. So, and it could just as well be Raheem as any of the other guys. So, I think justified risk
All right,
there.
I'm on the clock now. I've got 2 running backs, a receiver, and a tight end. It would make sense to go with the receiver 2, though I am tempted to take a second running back. There are a couple good options here for that. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to have to go with the guy we were just talking about, DK. You know, I want to say earlier when we were talking about them that Russell Wilson's always like to spread the ball around a little bit, and I think he's got great potential, and so does everyone else in that offense, especially because Wilson's supposed to be pretty hungry this year to try and, you know, get another Super Bowl ring, have a really good season, maybe win MVP.
Absolutely.
So I'm on the clock. I've only got one receiver at this point. So even though Ertz is looking at me in the face, I'm going to take another one. One guy that I think people are a little bit too low on after still having another good year for the 3rd year in a row is Keenan Allen. Even though there was a quarterback switch, I still expect him to get a lot of receptions and a lot of yards. And again, since we're in a half PPR league, even the little 8-yard, 7-yard receptions still all add up. And I don't expect Allen to go anywhere.
I think it's a great pick, Leo. I like Keenan Allen a lot too, but I just didn't pick him that time. But I think it's a great pick.
Ethan's
So
on the
looking
clock.
at the draft. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Ethan.
That breaks my heart because that was my exact pick. Kind of the stable, consistent floor, but I'm perfectly okay here going for Cortland Sutton as well. This is someone that I'm really high on, and I think potentially has a higher ceiling than Keenan Allen. I was targeting floor here, but with Devontae Adams, I'm going to pair that with Cortland Sutton any day.
Yeah,
Finally, Zach Ertz
I
gets picked.
was considering with my receiver pick too.
Unfortunately, a lot of the guys who I was hoping to get here have gone off the board before my picks. But there's still a number of compelling options. I think I'm not going to go tight end here. I know that there are other people who are going to be very happy to know that Higbee just went off the board. Sorry, Rohan. But there's a number of compelling options here. I don't think I'm going to go running back, even though we have the best handcuff in the league, Kareem Hunt, standing right here at the top of the list. I want to go wide receiver. I think I'm actually going to go double wide receiver here. And I think I'm going to start with Devontae Parker, a guy who unquestionably broke out and had a big end of the year last year. Not much has changed in that situation. Maybe the schedule's a little bit harder. There's definitely some risks with that pick, but I'm sort of going for ceiling now that we're here in round 6. That's definitely, I'm looking for guys who could eventually break my starting lineup. I make that exact same determination when I draft my next guy, Michael Gallup, a guy who was spoken very highly of by Coach Mike McCarthy down in Dallas. We have a resident Dallas fan here, Leo, who can tell me whether or not I just made a big mistake. Leo, what do you think?
Michael Gallup was actually, check me on that numbers, but I believe he was with 100 yards of Amari Cooper last year. He's actually the much more, and that's despite missing 2 games due to injury. He's got a great floor. He puts up strong receiving numbers every year, or every week rather. I think that's a great pick.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, with Gallup for sure, and of course I'll just hand it over to Ethan in a second as it's his pick. But with Gallup, there's so many vacated targets, like 83 apiece from both Jason Witten and Randall Cobb, and you can't accept CeeDee Lamb to just assume like all of those targets as a rookie. So I think he could be a huge value.
Yeah, I had him on my team last year, and he really held me down when I needed it. So I think it's a good pick as well.
Yeah, I'm going to reach a little bit here for someone, and his name's Tyler Boyd. Here, my philosophy here is I could go quarterback, could go tight end. I'm looking for the consistent flex. Joe Burrow targets a slot over 100 times a season, and believing in Boyd is equivalent to believing in Burrow and that offense. I don't see AJ Green being on the field that much, and Boyd is going to have another 1,000-yard season.
All right, I'm on the clock. I'm sitting here with 3 running backs and 2 receivers, so I still do need a quarterback and a tight end, and there are many quarterbacks that are hovering around this average draft position. But I'm actually going to go somewhere else. I think this is a great opportunity to get somebody that had a lot of hype not a lot of hype, but a good season last year and is only going to get better. And that's in Marquise Brown. I think he's got really good potential, especially with the fast-paced offense that the Ravens have, to work as my third wide receiver.
Right. Well, right now I'm looking at choosing between their Devin Singletary from my RB3. He had a very promising end of the year and really performed well in his last year. I think he's a good back to have on my team. Or Deshaun Watson, just because he's a very good dual-threat quarterback. At the end of the day, though, I think running back depth is more important than quarterback, so I'm going to depth Singletary. I was really impressed with how he played last year. I had him on my team for a while, and he came through in some important weeks. So I like him a lot.
Yeah, we're in an interesting point in the draft where we got a lot of these quarterbacks that are hovering around, all viable within the top 15 or next 15 picks. Interested to see how that turns out.
I don't know about you guys.
Ryan's still muted.
Well, that's fine. I'll tell you what I think, and that is that I'm going to wait on a quarterback.
So my strategy, if I'm just going to interrupt to make my pick. My strategy this entire draft has been consistency and reliability, but I'm going to take my first big real risk here with AJ Green. I think that if he's healthy and Joe Burrow plays well, he could really return to his former stardom. So, yeah, if Lev, you want to finish what you were saying there?
Well, yeah. Well, it's Rohan's pick now, but I'll get back to it later.
Yeah, so I think it's about time for me to select a quarterback. Kyler Murray just got picked, but he was not the quarterback I was going to draft anyways. I'm actually going to go with Matt Ryan here. As it's my, I'll explain logic in a second. How about Stephon Diggs? I expect him to do at least as well as John Brown did last year. And although John Brown didn't explode rather often, he presented one of the best floors in the league. And I think Diggs will be that and much more. I mean, Diggs is one of the best deep threats in the league, and that'll help out Josh Allen a lot. As despite Josh Allen having maybe the least accurate deep ball in the league last year, John Brown still showed out, and Brown's known as a deep threat receiver. So I think Diggs will be in a great position to succeed. As for Matt Ryan, I'm just super high on the entire Falcons offense. The defense continues to suck, and Julio's still there. They brought in Todd Gurley, who's a threat in the passing game. Hayden Hurst is an explosive tight end option who might be even better than Austin Hooper. So I'm just very high on everyone.
So as you can see, I just took Evan Ingram while Rohan was talking, and I need a tight end on my roster. And the issue with Ingram is that he's pretty injury prone, but I think that if he's healthy, he's a solid target for Jones. So I'm just hoping that happps.
Oh no, Hayden Hurst just got taken. It's my late round target.
I just drafted Deshaun Watson. I think he's surprisingly lower ranked than I thought he'd be, even despite the loss of DeAndre Hopkins. He's always been a great quarterback, been able to make throws when others might not be able to, and also use his legs. So I think provided he stays healthy, he'll have a great season.
So I'm coming up on the clock here. I still need both a quarterback and a tight end, and in the last 5 picks, or last even 8 picks, like 7 of them have been those two. So at this point, I'm actually willing to just go ahead and wait on those and hope to get some value later in the draft. So I might as well maximize my strengths, which are running back and wide receiver. I'm going to take somebody that has either very much the potential to take over his backfield, and that's Jordan Howard. He was at least solid last year, and especially with a new Miami backfield that is getting a couple of new faces, he could emerge as the main starter. And if that's the case, then I will definitely bank on him, potentially trade him for some other value later on down the road.
Yeah, you robbed me twice there, Leo. Staring right at Jordan Howard, but always have to be prepared when I'm drafting 2 spots after you for backups. So we talked about how much we don't like Melvin Gordon. I love Phil Lindsay here in the late 7th round. There was talks about Royce Freeman stealing the backfield in the Broncos. All Phil Lindsay did was rush for a second consecutive 1,000-yard season. He's an extremely efficient runner. And if Gordon gets banged up with an injury, here's a guy who is a huge value here, late 7th round. So that's my pick.
Sniped me. I wanted him as sort of like an ultimate handcuff to Melvin Gordon. Oh, well, I'm still going to draft a running back here. I'll just need to figure out someone else. We've got Cam Akers left. That's a guy I'm not super excited about. J.K. Dobbins got taken, I probably would have taken him over Cam Akers. That's a pity.
The
There's
issue
guys
with a
like
lot of these running backs is that because of no preseason games, we get no look into who's actually going to be the starter and who's more effective. So guys like Cam Akers are definitely more risky than this year, even more than usual.
here's how desperate I am. I think I might take Antonio Gibson here. This is a guy who's getting a lot of hype in the out of Washington. I mean, he's got a lot of competition, including the likes of Adrian Peterson, Bryce Love. But considering there's no season games and I only have 2 running backs, I sort of need to take some risks. I like his upside as a kind of backfield leader more than guys like Marlon Mack and Tevin Coleman. So I think I'm just going to do it. Let's see if it works out. I'm not going to auto draft again. I'm not going to make that mistake twice. So there's a couple of quarterbacks here. I think, like Leo, I'm going to wait on tight end and QB. There's more value later on in this draft. But I'm not super excited about a lot of the guys here. Maybe I will take a QB just because there's not a lot of value at other positions I think I'm going to be getting at this point. Whereas if I were to draft, say, a guy like Matt Stafford, I'll probably get a solid QB1 floor for this season. Of course, at the beginning of last season, he was just out there massacring the competition before his injury. So if I can get even a shred of that, that'll probably be a worthy pick.
Coming up on the clock here in a little bit, my opinion for the quarterback strategy is for this year, you either go Lamar or Mahomes or you wait for a while. I'm really big on just stacking up at the running back and wide receiver position. Those are the people I like to package into trade deals midseason. And I think just having an arsenal there will be very valuable. That being said, I think you guys know it's coming. Have to do it. Marvin Jones Jr. It's more tradition than logic at this point, but shouldn't need to justify this one. It's round 8. It's time to take MJJ.
Wait, we've got to make a quick pause here. Someone just drafted Brandon Cooks. Rohan, tell the world.
No.
I'll let you Leo first.
Oh no.
Well, we lost our first defense and kicker all the way in the 8th round. A bit surprising, but people can be high on whoever they want. I'm still without a tight end and a quarterback, and I think I'm going to go ahead and make one of those picks. Here's a guy that doesn't have a lot of weapons, but he always makes it happen with who he does, whether it be his running backs or the receivers that you've never heard of. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, can't fault you with that as much as I want to.
All right. I am actually not 100% sure who I want to take here. There's a bunch of kind of running backs, all of whom may not even get the starting job or a true starting job, except for, I guess, James White, but he's not really. The Patriots running back system doesn't really work that way. I do want to draft a receiver here. The next highest ranked receiver is Edelman, who might have a good season. Again, he'll be the number 1 receiver in New England, but their situation is very odd right now. Although I can't say that any of these backs excite me, and they may not even make my starting lineup at the end of the day. So, whereas I think Edelman has a better chance, especially depending on matchup and things like that, and what kind of stuff Belichick has to do. So I'm actually going to draft Edelman.
How long until someone drafts Alexander Madison? Is it going to be one of you guys?
I
That
do
could
not plan on
maybe,
drafting
but
him.
No.
Well, as of now, it's not going to be me. You'll remember that I drafted Raheem Mostert earlier in this draft. And, with the 49ers committee, he's really no guarantee to get the lion's share of the carries. So I'm going to cover my bases and take Tevin Coleman. So I'm pretty much guaranteed to get whoever ends up being the featured runner out of that 49ers backfield.
Yeah, that's a huge snipe. I was planning on taking Coleman. I'm almost high on him to a fault, actually. Coleman, he can go off anytime. He had that 4-touchdown game in the beginning of the season. And then even in the playoffs in the divisional game against the Vikings, he just, after weeks of Mostert, he just unexpectedly had 20 carries for 100-plus yards and a touchdown. So that could happen anytime. And really, he has the pass-catching upside that Mostert doesn't. I'm actually going to go with one who's often mentioned in the same breath as those players, and that's Matt Breida. Jordan Howard is not someone who should be catching passes, and he proved to be banged up for large portions of last year. And I think Matt Breida is an extremely efficient running back who doesn't need that guaranteed volume in order to even be an RB3 or RB2. So I'm going to go with him there. And after that, I still don't have a tight end, but I still think I'm going to wait on them and get my guy later. I'm going to go with Tariq Cohen here. Cohen was extremely inefficient last season, but he still had a ton of receptions. And the year before, he was a borderline RB1, actually. I don't know how many people know that. But there's definitely some positive regression in store for Cohen. He's not going to average like 5 yards per catch again. And Nick Foles has, I mean, as a quarterback, he tends to check down a fair bit. He made LaShawn McCoy quite an involved pass catcher back in Philadelphia with always like 50, 60 receptions a year. I would predict much of the same, if not better, for Cohen.
So, as you remember, I drafted Evan Ingram earlier. I like Evan Ingram, but I am worried about his injury status. So that's why I drafted a backup tight end this early. Went with Rob Gronkowski. He's another boomer bust guy, but with Brady throwing passes to him and hopefully he's fully healthy now, I think he could break out and get a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah. I'm on the clock right now. Cam Akers is still here. He's only really here because Henderson is questionable, might be injured, I think. There's a couple of good handcuffs. This is going to be interesting. I think I'm actually going to take a flyer and take Akers at this point. You got to take risks sometimes, and I think, especially with no preseason games, just as it could be, players could be bad unexpectedly, players could also be good unexpectedly. So we shall see.
Yeah, you never know with rookie running backs.
So our friend Smoody is upset that people drafted defenses in rounds 8 and 9 and has left the group. I agree. I think that's a little early to be drafting defenses. So despite me not having one, that's not an option I'm going to be considering. Give me 1 second for this auto pick to occur. They took another defense. So earlier I mentioned that one of the upside picks that I'm taking is Jonathan Taylor. And now I have actually the chance to go ahead and grab the guy that he's trying to surpass in Marlon Mack. By taking both of these guys, I don't expect it to be a back and forth situation with the two. I don't expect a committee. I think one of them is going to emerge, even if it's a couple games into the season. And so by taking Mack, now I have both of the options for those.
So I've waited a while for quarterbacks. And here's where I think I take one. Eyes are on Drew Brees and Carson Wentz as I'm waiting for Troy to wrap up his pick. He takes Crowder. To be honest with you, Drew Brees is someone who people were low on last year, but he produced when healthy. But this year, I think it's going to be the first year I kind of fade on him a little bit. Carson Wentz, I think, is mistakenly known to be injured prone. He had a couple of concussions, but really, I expect him to be on the field this year. And when he's there, he's a top 10 quarterback for fantasy.
All right, and so it falls to me. I think I'm going to start this with probably my biggest reach of this draft. I don't know if this guy is on your radar, but he's definitely on mine. This is the brand new wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, Jerry Jeudy. Highly touted, very skilled. Everyone cannot stop screaming his name out of camp. As always, coach speak isn't everything. In fact, usually it's nothing. But having watched this guy come out of college through the combine, this looks as close to the perfect rookie wide receiver as possible. Now, this is a risky pick. I cannot deny it. But definitely what I'm thinking about, again, at this point in the draft, I'm looking for guys who can maybe crack my starting lineup, and I definitely see Jerry Jeudy as a guy with the upside to potentially do that. Okay, now I've got to do something else. I think I need to draft a running back here just to finish out this core, and then I'll start working on other things. I'm surprised that no one's drafted Alexander Mattison, and I drafted him for a specific reason right there. It's because of the contract dispute between the Vikings and Dalvin Cook. I think that there is a real chance that Dalvin Cook does not play a lot this season, or holds out for some, or of course because it's Dalvin Cook gets badly injured. So I think Alexander Mattison is definitely a guy who can, in pretty reasonable circumstance, jump up into that starting role in Minnesota.
Coming up on the clock here. Right now we're in handcuff galore in terms of ADP. And I think I'm going to go with the ADP and select the handcuff here. The guy I'm going to target, I think people might have some idea who it is. It's going to be Latavius Murray. This is a guy who has exploded for 30-point performances in the 2 weeks that Kamara is out. Kamara's been roughed up a little bit. He's kind of a household name in the starting 11. Latavius Murray is going to join Marvin Jones Jr. to start on the bench this season.
Yeah, I mean, like Murray, he only started like 2 games last season, but he just absolutely went off. And like, there's always that upside with him, whether it was backing up Dalvin Cook in Minnesota when Cook was often injured. Murray's one of the best, most reliable handcuffs in the league, who has RB4 or RB3 standalone value as well.
So I'm looking here. I've already got 5 running backs. I don't need really any other additional handcuffs at this point. So I'm looking for a receiver. The guy that I'm going to be going with, if I can find him, is here, John Brown. John Brown put together a very solid season last year, and that's really what I'm looking for in a backup at this point. I've got some significant or some wide receiver depth already, but one of them is Marquise Brown, which is more of a flyer. So I think John Brown gives me some ground.
Yeah, I'm feel similar to you right now, Leo. I want a receiver. I got a couple running backs right now. Looking at the people who are available, I think there's some potential in CeeDee Lamb, but there's already a lot of pretty crowded receiver core in Dallas. So I'm actually going to go with Emmanuel Sanders. He's going to be one of the better wide receiver 2s in the league this year, I think, across from Michael Thomas. He's a really good receiver in his own right, could probably be a wide receiver 1 if he was on a different team. And, of course, with a great quarterback throwing to him, I think he will do really well, just like he did in his time in San Francisco.
So, as some of you know, I'm an Auburn fan when it comes to college football, so you're going to see a little bit of my bias shine through here. But I know that the Lions drafted DeAndre Swift, but I don't expect Kerryon Johnson to loosen his handle on the RB1 spot for them so easily. I still think he's going to get a lot of carries and be a solid backup running back for me, so I'm going to take him here.
Yeah, speaking of Auburn, one name is intriguing me. It's Cam Newton. I mean, I really have no idea what to expect, to be honest, from him next year. And I've already drafted my quarterback, but Newton, in the first half of 2018, his play was resembling his play in his MVP 2015 season. And his completion percentage was the best it was in his career. And his deep ball was excellent. He was still mobile. So if he can still, resemble 80% of the player he was in 2018, he'd be a great value. So I'm going to take flyer on Cam there. I don't think Stem's going to win the job, actually. It looks like it's going to be Brian Hoyer as the QB2 there, actually. Stidham's apparently been having a very bad camp, and he's been dinged up a little bit. All right, I'm up again, and it's about time I take my tight end. I'm going to get my guy here. It's Blake Jarwin. Jason Witten, as I mentioned earlier, had 83 targets last year. And even Jarwin had about 40 in his own right. And he's shown many flashes, one of them being a 3-touchdown game against the Giants a couple seasons ago. And I definitely think that Jarwin's walking into some targets. And even if he's the 4th option in the team, he can still approach 100 targets and perhaps be a borderline tight end 1.
So I'm going to take what I believe is my first rookie of this draft, and that's going to be Justin Jefferson. With Diggs out of Minnesota, that's going to clear up some targets for the rookie, and I think he may end up putting similar numbers to Diggs in a couple years and take his spot in the offense.
All right, so I'm on the clock right now. I don't really know who to take right here. Again, there's a lot of handcuffs at running back and a couple people at receiver. I think there's still a couple of – I think the receivers, again, are deeper as usual with the running backs. I don't really have any interest in drafting a big handcuff at this point, so I'm going to actually reach a little bit here and take Ruggs. There's been talk that he could fill the role left by Antonio Brown, and of course there's not a whole lot of receiving options in Oakland right now. So I think he has a huge upside, and also, Derek Carr has proven himself to be able to play at a really high level. Been a couple of years since he has, but he has that potential in him. So I think there's a lot of potential here with this pick.
So I've waited for eons to take a tight end. It's finally time to make that happen. I'm going to take somebody in an offense that absolutely adores tight ends, even though he's the number 2 option, that being Dallas Goedert. we've already seen how much Wentz favors his tight ends, especially without, significantly, talented receivers. And so I think he'll still put up some good numbers. Ethan, you're muted.
I stacked up on running backs earlier. And that part of the reason is because I think there's just great value down here in these later rounds for a wide receiver. I'm going to go with my first rookie here. It's CeeDee Lamb. Simply, the guy's electric in college, and I like rooting for a rookie that I enjoy watching. I think he's just as risky or safe as some of these other wide receivers, such as Ruggs, Rieger. But I think Lamb, in terms of the eye test, is a tier higher for me.
All right, it's time for me to go. I'm also doing a tight end this time around. There's a couple of options. It's kind of shocking how far Mike Gesicki has fallen.
Well, unfortunately, he'll be auto-drafted if Ariel is not on, which appears to be the case.
Well, that's good because I wasn't planning on taking him. There's a couple options here at this point in the draft that I'm sort of interested in. We've got sort of the post-hype sleeper, Chris Herndon, who is supposedly uninjured and supposedly things are going well. This is Chris Herndon's what you might call a freak athlete, and he's with a QB who really loves his tight ends, and Sam Darnold. I think that this guy's got a ton of potential. Another great person to look at here is Austin Hooper. He's now in Cleveland. Tight end didn't do super well there last year, but this is Austin Hooper who had a really good time. However, I do think that Herndon is probably the better buy. I do think that the system is going to really hurt Hooper in Cleveland. I've got another pick here. I would have loved to have taken Mike Williams if it wasn't for this injury news. So I'm going to do something a little different, and I'm going to draft Christian Kirk, a guy who has definitely had some hype in the past. This one's definitely a little bit of a risk. My hope is that having D-Hop there is going to open up the field so much that Christian Kirk can get some kind of big-time number 2 production. We're talking sort of Tyler Boyd with A.J. Green. When that happens, of course, Tyler Boyd is famous for having many more points fantasy-wise when A.J. Green is on the field. I'm hoping for that same sort of thing with Christian Kirk. I think that's a pretty good value buy. Pick 133. No shame.
Yeah, definitely on board with that pick. As you guys know, I took Kelsey in the second round. Maybe reached a little bit for him. The guy I'm about to draft right here is someone I was happy to get in the 11th round as targeting, but I'm ecstatic here to get him in the 12th round. I think he has breakout potential written all over him. You could argue he already kind of broke out. It's Noah Fant right here. Giving me a little insurance in case Kelsey gets injured or anything happens in the offense. Noah Fant in the 12th round is something I'm very happy with.
All right, looks like I'm up next. It was mentioned earlier that I'm a Cowboys fan, so I do know some of the ins. And one of the things that the team is trying to do is get Tony Pollard more involved. That being said, obviously Ezekiel Elliott is going to take most of the workload. Although this is going to be a high-scoring offense, I expect Tony Pollard to get his chances. And plus, he's one of the top handcuffs in the game if something were to happen to Zeke.
All right, so I'm still looking here. I'm considering taking a backup tight end again because I have, I think, one of the better, or arguably the best, if not second best, tight end in the game right now, George Kittle. Because I don't really like the running backs that are on the board right now. So, or really the receivers. So I think tight end might actually be pretty decent value at this point. I actually think that the Cleveland system when situation was tight ends last year was more because they didn't have any good tight ends to throw to. They really trusted. Now they'll have 2 potentially with Njoku and Hooper is a pretty good guy. So I think I'm going to take him.
So now, as my pick is coming up, there is a guy who I honestly do not understand how he is still around in this draft. And it's an easy pick for me. I think it's going to be a steal. And if you look at his stats from last year, they don't appear that impressive. But then you look at what he did during his playoff run. So I got to go with Deebo Samuel right here.
Yeah, the thing with Samuel is that the reason why his ADP's dropped so much is that he's expected to start the season injured. It's kind of unclear what his timeline to return is, but definitely when he comes back, the upside is such that he could be a potential league winner. I mean, there's really no one there in San Francisco who can threaten his targets at all. and he, as you said, he really showed out. I think, speaking of great handcuffs, as we just discussed, Pollard, I'm going to go with Chase Edmonds here. This is not only because of the news that Drake was in a walking boot as of yesterday, but he definitely has some standalone value, as all running backs in offenses that include Kenyon Drake tend to have, and definitely a huge ceiling when he starts, which might seem inevitable for a couple games each season, seeing Drake's tendencies. It's my pick again, and I'm going to go with Ryan Tannehill as as another quarterback. Tannehill's interesting. I know I did something unadvisable by selecting 3 quarterbacks, and I would not recommend that, but I couldn't at this. It was a situation of best player available here. He was a top 5 fantasy football quarterback when he took the job from Mariota, and with AJ Brown expected to maybe make a leap, or Corey Davis should be involved as well. Johnny Smith now will have time to shine. I'm really high on Tannehill.
So I'm about to do something quite inadvisable as well, and that is take a kicker in the 3rd to last round. I'm going to go with Matt Gay of the Bucks. I really think that he's going to break out as the Bucks offense does too. He was a rookie last year, and I think he's going to get his confidence this time and start banging them in. So with most of my other positions filled out, I'm actually pretty happy with taking him there.
All right. I know I said I didn't like any of the running backs, but I'm going to take one here. I think in terms of value, I think it's time to pick some more bench fillers, and I think Devontae Freeman's a decent choice. He's talented, and I don't think, especially with Todd Gurley's injury history, that the Falcons' backfield is necessarily a lock to be in it to shape up in any sort of way. So I think he's a fine pick and has some good potential.
Yeah, I'll just interject for a second. I think Freeman's actually a free agent, but despite that, I still think he may be worth a pick around now because given that
You're the free agent.
uniqueness of the season, it's very possible many starting running backs get injured or even get COVID, and people will have to rush around and see pick someone off the streets, and Devonta Freeman is going to lead that list. So yeah.
So I'm trying to get everybody on Kansas City that I can. I think Hardman is a great option to potentially usurp Sammy Watkins as the number 2 receiver. We actually mentioned this at the starting 11 being one of our best values later on in the draft, and I'm going along with that.
Yeah, good pick for sure. I talked about my faith for Carson Wentz playing a full season. That being said, I do feel good about having a QB2 on my bench who's missed 1 game in the last 80, and that's Kirk Cousins. Don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's statistically a good quarterback. And like I said, missed 1 game in the past 5 seasons. Comfortable quarterback 2 to have on anyone's bench.
So what I love about round 13 is that if I draft a guy that I don't like, I can just cut him and not feel bad about it at all. So I've been thinking maybe I should draft a backup QB. Maybe I should draft a backup tight end. And I think I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to go for guys with upside here, and certainly on the wide receiver side, there's a lot of guys here still around that I think have as much upside as anyone. Well, not as anyone, but certainly as much as upside as maybe around 9 or 10 sort of guy. So I'm not going to draft Mike Williams due to the injury, but we've got guys left like Curtis Samuel, Golden Tate, Rashad Perriman. I'm interested in Golden Tate and Rashad Perriman especially. In fact, I've got 2 picks. I think I'm going to draft them both.
I can tell you as a Jets fan that Rashad Perriman's been having a great camp, and Denzel Mims is currently injured with a hamstring injury, and he's been out for at least a week, and it's unclear when he'll return. Although he should be good for week 1, but really we don't know. And the other receiving options there are just basically Crowder and Chris Hogan, who was just recently picked up off the street. So Perriman definitely, he was a wide receiver 1 in the last few weeks of the season last year when Godwin and Evans went down, and there's definitely some potential there, although I'd be wary of getting anyone in Adam Gase offense.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe Bell and Crowder.
That's what I was saying earlier. That was a round 14 pick. If it goes bad, I can just drop them. I'll need to pick up a tight end or a QB eventually.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I could really round out my traditional team here by picking Carlos Hyde. That would really it seems like no matter when I pick, these guys always just follow my team, but I just can't justify picking Hyde with Carson and Penny also in the backfield. And I think just Hyde's just a worse version than Chris Carson at this point. I'm going to actually deviate from tradition for once, and I'm going to just pick a guy that I don't necessarily believe in, but the receiving field there is just so bad that if Edelman doesn't play a full season and this guy even takes a slight step up, the targets just have to go to him. So it's N'Keal Harry.
So
That's
my bench is completely
actually
filled
great
out
pick.
at this point. I need a defense and a kicker, so I'm going to go defense first. Looking down the options, none of these guys or none of these teams are going to be teams that I'm going to be starting every week. So I'm actually looking for one that's going to have a lot of good matchups. And I think about the worst division in terms of defenses. I'm actually going to draft the Tennessee defense. You got multiple games against, Jacksonville, the Colts. These are teams that are not going to be putting up big numbers. Plus, they're in the AFC, which is just generally the weaker conference. So I expect the defense of Tennessee to at least have a lot of good options for playing during the season.
Yeah, I also have a full bench. Kicker and defense are my next two options. I think having a decent defense can really be helpful. So there's Kansas City, Minnesota. And Kansas City I don't know if I like them. They have a lot of, even though they're very good, they have a lot of high-scoring games. Honestly, I like Minnesota for this one. They've got a lot of very talented players, and I think that they are invested in keeping the score low in their game, so I'm going to draft them. Also, I really like your pick of N'Keal Harry. Once again, the Patriots have a lot of uncertainty, but I think the team itself is very high on N'Keal Harry, and they want to give him more passes, more looks. So
Yeah.
I really excited to see what they're going to do this year.
So I'm also going to take a defense, but I'm a fantasy player who likes to stream defenses each week. So I'm not necessarily going to keep this defense around all season. So I'm just looking for a team with a great week one matchup. That's going to be the Eagles because they're playing the Washington football team the first week. And they could if they could edge me to a week one win, I'll take that any day.
All right, it's my turn to draft, and I have 2 slots left, and I don't have a defense or kicker. I'm not going to draft either of them. I am between 2 receivers here, Michael Pittman Jr. and Robbie Anderson. I'm actually ultimately going to go with Anderson, but I wish I could talk about both. We probably don't have time. But as for Anderson, he's going to play for Matt Rule, who was his coach at Temple in college. And apparently, although it may not seem as a very intuitive pick, due to the fact that Robbie Anderson's mainly known as a deep threat wide receiver and Teddy Bridgewater doesn't throw deep very often, he's definitely walking into a solidified wide receiver 2 role there. It's not going to be Curtis Samuel. Samuel's had his chance to shine for 2 seasons. He's done absolutely nothing, been very inefficient, although I must admit he is talented. It's now time for my last pick, and I'm going to go with the wide receiver 2 in Green Bay, Allen Lazard. Lazard was arguably the wide receiver 2 for parts of last season. Initially, it looked like it was going to be Geronimo, who flashed in 2018, or MVS, who also flashed in 2018. But MVS started out hot, but then he kind of cooled down a bit and lost his snap share. And Lazard kind of walked in and gained Rodgers' trust, which is extremely important. And although it's possible the Packers do bring in someone, let's say someone like an Antonio Brown after his suspension ends, and that could be huge, or maybe they trade for someone, I think that Lazard is definitely going to be the wide receiver 2, as there's a lack of trust in MVS, and Geronimo's gone, and Devin Funchess opted out. So really, who else is it going to be?
So as you can see, I just selected Gardner Minshew with my final pick. I needed a backup quarterback, and I don't know if you've heard, but Bud Light is actually doing a deal where if you win your league with Gardner Minshew as your starting quarterback, you get a season's worth of free beer. So if Pat Mahomes goes down and I'm doing well towards the end of the season, who knows? I could be a big winner.
So I'm going to either draft a kicker or a backup QB here. I don't like getting the QBs enough to actually draft them, so I'm going to go with my favorite kicker, Younghoe Koo. He actually was pretty good last season, and with kickers it's really hard to tell who's going to be good or not. So I just like him as a kicker. I like his, he's got a great story of being out of the league, coming back, and yeah. So why not?
Yeah, plus you always want to tie yourself to kickers who are in good offenses, and in all seriousness, I mean, the Falcons' offense will score a lot of points, and if they are even the slightest bit inefficient in the red zone, that could benefit Koo a lot.
Right. I mean, they're often a victim of a really tough division in the NFC South. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm drafting this kicker based purely on their offense. The Arizona kicker, Zane Gonzalez, not necessarily the most accurate and well-known kicker, but I expect
Hey,
Arizona.
Lev, it's your guy.
So
Not
that's where I'm
wrong.
going up.
Yeah, something I guess I learned my lesson in fantasy. Can never abandon your roots. Carlos Hyde is still on the board. Tell me the last time you were able to draft a 1,000-yard rusher in the last round. I don't think you can. Carlos Hyde, 1,000-yard rusher, crowded backfield. But if someone gets injured, he could be back again. Here's my boy.
So I've got an interesting choice here. I don't have a kicker and I don't have a quarterback. Usually I'm not the sort of guy, I don't have a kicker and I don't have a defense. Usually I'm not the sort of guy to leave holes on my team like this, but I've been known to do it in the past, and I think I'm going to do it again. I'm going to be looking for one of the guys who I think has one of the highest upside abilities in this league. This guy's an absolute touchdown machine, and I really, every year, I feel like he goes into this draft a little bit more underrated than the last. You all know who it is. It is Buck Allen, the best running back
There we
in the National Football League.
What a steal!
This guy
My
should have gone
goodness.
first overall, and here he is going 180th.
Yeah, there's nothing more terrifying than being the owner of, let's say, like an Alex Collins or like a Saquon Barkley, and then just seeing like Buck Allen line up at the fullback position, just vulture a touchdown, and then do that crazy dance of his.
He's the best player on the field whenever he's on the field. Admittedly, he's not on the field all that much, but whenever he's there, he's the best one around. I'm so happy to have this guy on my team. I'm going to call my team the Buck Truck. I'm so excited. This is the best pick of my entire draft, I think. And actually, that's what I'd like to ask you guys next. Do you guys have a favorite pick, a best value pick, or kind of a favorite pick on any metric that you guys just had from this draft we just finished?
I'm gonna go. I actually do. Upon looking back through my team, it's actually none of my starters. I'm actually really excited to see what Henry Ruggs does. I think the Raiders offenses could potentially take a big step this year, and if they do, Ruggs will be right at the center of it. He's one of the much anticipated and much hyped up receivers coming out of this year's draft class, and Gruden said they want him to kind of take the role they want Antonio Brown to have. So if everything goes well, I think he could really, really do well this year, and so I'm excited to see what he does.
So my favorite pick of my draft, now that I'm looking back at my team, is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. This is going to be Juju's first year in the NFL where he has a healthy Ben Roethlisberger throwing to him and no Antonio Brown to compete for catches with. So with such a carved out role in the Steelers offense, which really is pass first when Ben Roethlisberger is around, I expect him to put up huge volume numbers. And I think that if he finishes in the top 5 of all the NFL receivers this year, I would not actually be that surprised. So I think I got him for great value.
For me, while I think getting Kenyon Drake as my RB2 is great value, I'm actually going to go with the combination of Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack. Like I mentioned during the draft, I don't expect this to be a timeshare. I expect one of them to outright win the job and then take over the Colts offense behind their strong offensive line. I think it's great that I was able to get both of them because admittedly I don't know which of the two is going to win, but now I have both options.
Yeah, on the comical note here, I really do think my best pick of the draft was Carlos Hyde. And I'll repeat the fact that I don't think you can get a 1,000-yard rusher in the last round. And anyone who's followed my teams will know that Latavius Murray, Marvin Jones, and Carlos Hyde are always going to end up on my team. And I love my guys so much that I always share the love through trade packages. Week 4, week 5, look for your trade notifications. Because if Carlos Hyde has one good game, he's going to get packaged up and find a new home.
Amazing. My best pick, I'd probably have to go with Stephon Diggs, actually. Actually, no, I'm going to change that. I'm going to say Blake Jarwin. Jarwin would have been better as a tight end too, but I'm actually pretty confident in him as my tight end 1, and mainly just getting him as late as I did. I explained the logic earlier, and I just think he's one of the prime breakout candidates this year heading into his 3rd NFL season.
I guess that leaves me for last. My team is definitely a little bit weird in construction because of that awful Melvin Gordon auto pick. I've got tons and tons of guys who wide receivers specifically who could absolutely blow up. There are so few wide receivers on my roster who I think are kind of low floor, likely to be bad player sort of guys. But despite all that, and I said it at the beginning, I still think that the guy I'm highest on, maybe not my best pick, but the guy I'm highest on is Josh Jacobs. I got him. I say not my best pick because I definitely reached for him a little bit. I took him above his ADP, and I don't feel bad about that even a little bit. I do think that this is one of the only running backs going around his ADP that has a real shot at being a top 5 running back in the league, say maybe even a top 1 or a top 3. This guy, he's so talented. You can watch the tape and see for yourself. You can listen to what Gruden says about him. And I mean, you could see what he did last season where he broke out under the radar. I'm so excited to have him on this roster.
All right, cool. I just want to conclude things by taking a quick look at the players who are left and maybe identifying a few players who maybe you regret you didn't draft because obviously it was only a 30-second clock. So we had to think very quickly while also giving our analysis that led to some oversights or to us accidentally drafting Melvin Gordons and James Connors of the world. So I was wondering, like, who do you think intrigues you among those who are left?
Well, I noticed that Sammy Watkins is still available. We talked a bit about this earlier with the Kansas City receivers. I mean, Watkins did have a good season last year in terms of like putting up some decent fantasy numbers as the non-number 1 option. And he's got the potential to do that if he can stay healthy and as long as he doesn't let Nicole Hardman surpass him. So I could definitely envision that being a flyer.
One player who I'm kind of surprised is still on the board. I know that you guys don't necessarily want to take too many quarterbacks, but Joe Burrow is still on the board. I know he's a rookie, so there's no guarantee with what he does, but he's in an offense with A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, and based on what he did last year at LSU, he could really blow up. So I'm excited to see what he does as a rookie, and you know, if my quarterbacks aren't working out, I'd scoop up Joe Burrow right away off the waiver wire.
Of course, there's all sorts of really kind of high-quality handcuffs that are still sitting here. Justin Jackson's a great one. If I had Eckler, I would have that guy on my team in a heartbeat. Same thing, maybe a little bit to a lesser extent for A.J. Dillon. Of course, Jamal Williams is still kicking around, so that one's not quite as much of a sure thing in my mind. But still, I was a little bit surprised to see DeAndre Washington still left. Mm-hmm. That is what I would call the presumptive RB2 in Kansas City. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a guy who's seemingly stepping into a true bell cow type role. Probably good to have a handcuff there. Those are a couple of guys I was surprised to see still on the board.
Yeah, for me, it's Larry Fitzgerald. Not because I would have drafted him, but simply I think this is going to be the first year in decades where this is that he gets left off the board. I see people picking him up at some points given the matchup or injuries, but just wanted to toss that out there. Larry Fitzgerald, first ballot Hall of Famer, left off the board for the first time.
Yeah, for me, it's Brandon Ayuk. He's the presumptive wide receiver 1 in San Francisco until Deebo Samuel comes back. And although he did recently get injured, he was really showing out in camp. And he was their first-round pick. You got to remember that as well. Also, one other guy, I know I'm kind of cheating by picking 2 people, but another guy I had in mind was Randall Cobb. The Houston Texans, I mean, we jokingly talked about Cooks earlier, but Cooks does have a very concerning concussion history where he suffered, I think, 5 documented NFL concussions, 3 of which were in the last 2 seasons. And although he's only missed 2 games, that can be a little bit misleading. And of course, we know Will Fuller's situation. He can never stay healthy, even though he may be the best receiver on the team. And who's that leave? New addition, Randall Cobb. Reliable receiver always, had years of prominence in Green Bay and had actually carved out a decent season last year with 800-plus yards in Dallas. So I'd keep an eye out on him at the end of drafts. Elvis?
I was a little surprised that, some of the quarterbacks, Garoppolo, Rivers, who are pretty consistent, were still on the board. I think they're pretty decent second or QB2 picks. Also, I'm gonna pick two again. Not really two, but the Green Bay running backs, Williams and Dillon. Green Bay, they do run it fairly often, and they're a pretty good handcuff for Aaron Jones, especially Aaron Jones falls off, which he may do.
Definitely possible. All right, guys. Thanks. This is super fun. I think we had a pretty interesting draft combined with some very draft plan altering auto picks. But yeah, this was great, guys. Thanks.